So if filmmakers really want to bring back the good old days when romantic comedies were the best thing in the movie theatres, then they are going to have to work so much harder, as unfortunately, Your Place or Mine is just not good enough. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel, Lifestyle Critic. I hope you're having a brilliant day. So in this video, we are going to be breaking down and reviewing Your Place or Mine, which is Netflix's latest romantic comedy movie. And I was genuinely looking forward to watching this movie as the lead stars are just so good. They've got Ashton Kutcher and Reese Witherspoon leading this movie. So I thought it was going to be absolutely brilliant, but unfortunately it is just so vanilla, so average, and so boring. However, if that's what you're looking for in terms of a movie that hasn't got much tension and hasn't got that much dynamism and is just a really heartwarming and wholesome movie, then actually you may well enjoy this movie, but unfortunately I didn't, and I'm going to be explaining why in this movie review. So this film is focusing on its two lead characters, Peter and Debbie, and supposedly they have been best friends for 20 years. And one day Peter steps up to really help Debbie out with an issue that she has, which results in both of them switching places. So Peter is now living in Debbie's world and Debbie is now living in Peter's world, and they both ultimately realize that they do love each other. And the film then explores what is going to happen next, which I think is really, really interesting, as the reason you are watching this movie is because the lead actors are so brilliant, so you want to kind of see their chemistry and all of the crazy things that take place. But really, you don't really see these two guys together at all. If anything, they must have filmed for what, maybe a week, as most of their scenes have them acting with other characters and other actors, which I think is really, really weird. But anyway, from a positive point of view, I think it's a really interesting premise in terms of what are you going to learn about somebody that you have been best friends with for so long that you might not have realized. And of course, like I keep saying, Ashton Kutcher and Reese Witherspoon are so brilliant. So even if the film isn't that great, you are going to be watching and being entertained because they are so good. And of course, New York and Los Angeles are just so prolific and so prominent. So it's really cool to kind of see both of these locations in this film. And like I said, the film is really, really heartwarming. It's got an interesting, unique premise, which you are really intrigued to see what is going to happen next. However, from a negative point of view, like I said, you really see these two characters together. In truth, the storyline is pretty boring. It is really predictable. You know exactly what is going to happen next. There is very little tension, and the tiny amount of tension that they do have right at the end of this movie is so quickly resolved that you're like, what on earth was the point of that? And I mean, Reese Witherspoon's storyline is so much more interesting than Ashton Kutcher's one. So, from a storyline perspective, they just could have done so much more. So like I keep saying, the cast of this movie are absolutely brilliant. Unfortunately, the characters, not so much. So let's go through them one by one. So first up, we have Ashton Kutcher playing Peter, who on paper seems like such an interesting lead character. But unfortunately, they just dilute this guy so much. So, he's really, really rich. He's having loads of flings. He's having loads of short-term relationships. He's feeling really unfulfilled. He's a wannabe author. He's got this best friend, Debbie, that he's always had a bit of a crush on. So he could have been a bit of a playboy like Bruce Wayne. And when he's sent over to LA, he's just becoming even more boring. As like I said, they just dilute any personality or enjoyment from this character. Ashton Kutcher, because he's such a brilliant actor, he can maintain your interest with this character, but come on, they could have done so much more with him. Similarly, we have Reese Witherspoon, who, like I said, is such an awesome actress, but unfortunately, based on the writing of this film, the character just could have been so much better. But she is a bit of a single mother. She is always really cautious and really careful with all of the decisions that she makes, especially when it involves her younger son. And finally, she is doing something for herself, so wants to complete a degree, which she has to do in New York City. And actually, the things that happen with this character is pretty interesting, as she is going on a bit of a New York adventure. She is meeting somebody new. She is doing things for herself for the first time. So, really, really interesting, but they could have just done so much more with the plot with these characters. By contrast, some of the secondary characters have the potential to be even more interesting than the primary lead. So, for example, Zoe Chao's character is one of Peter's past lovers, and she ends up helping Debbie navigate her adventure in New York City, including Theo, who she has a bit of a love interest with, and some interesting things transpire with this character. And back in LA, we have Alicia, played by Notaro, who is a friend of both Peter and Debbie, and is kind of helping them reconcile and helping Peter realize his true love for Debbie. So, from a casting character's point of view, they just could have done so much more with the leads in this film. Say from a visuals perspective, Your Place of Mine just feels so basic and so dated. For example, the split screen way of telling stories, you have just seen this being done so much better in other films. And there are just really simplistic camera angles taking place. And if anything, they just add to the boredom of this movie. However, by contrast, you know, I do love the modern technology, and Peter's apartment in New York City is absolutely awesome. So that is the only saving grace from a visuals perspective. But you know, that being said, you don't watch this movie for the brilliant visuals, and they are sufficient enough to communicate the storyline that they're trying to tell in this narrative. So from a comparison perspective, I really don't know what on earth is going on with romantic comedies at the moment, as they are just so basic. And if they really do want to bring this genre back, then they really do need to step it up, as the most recently released movie Ticket to Paradise, starring George Clooney and Julia Roberts, was just so basic and so boring. And similarly, this one starring Ashton Kutcher and Reese Witherspoon just should have been so much better. But you know, other movies released on Netflix, for example, Love Hard, Afterlife of the Party, and Holiday, were just so much better. Even Little Italy was a little bit basic, but was a lot more interesting than this one. But you know, the romantic comedy movies released all the way in the 90s and the early 2000s were just miles better. For example, Sliding Doors, While You Were Sleeping, and of course, My Best Friend's Wedding. So this film, unfortunately, just is not as good as they were. So overall, like I said, I really wanted to enjoy Your Place of Mine. By the way, I feel like the title of this film is so misleading, as it just doesn't really work with the actual narrative of what takes place in this movie. And if they really do want to bring back the romantic comedy genre, then they just need to go back to the drawing board and just work so much harder at it, as films like this are just so average and really just do demonstrate that they just need to work so much harder. And so for all of those reasons, unfortunately, I have to give it a 4 out of 10. Now, I'd love to hear what you thought of this film, so please let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in my next video.